Hi, and welcome to the Wonkette Weekend live chat that is not actually live this week. I am Robyn Panacchia, and with me, as always, is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson. And as an extra special treat this week, we have the lovely Jamie Lynn Crofts. Lovely and talented both. Like,
Why, thank you.
thank you for coming and hanging out with us.
So, Jamie, you are a former West Virginian, not currently. So, we thought it'd be great to have you on to talk about the parting Senator Joe Manchin, who recently announced that he would not be allowing himself to get publicly humiliated against Governor Justice. And I thought something was very interesting about 5 years ago, almost exactly. You wrote a piece called "Why I'm Not Voting for Joe Manchin," and you proactively were going to be like, "Don't mansplain Senate math to me." But this is the stand I'm taking, and this is obviously before 2020 when Black voters helped flip the Senate. And we rarely hear the names sometimes, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, but they're the ones who gave Manchin and Sinema the sort of oversized power that they then yielded over the party. But this is back in 2018. Can you speak to what motivated that choice in 2018?
Yeah, so I had already been in West Virginia for like about 5 years at that point. And I was used kind of, had adjusted from Chicago politics to West Virginia politics by that point, and had been planning on holding my nose and voting for him because
Mhm.
it is important. Federal representation is important. It
Yeah.
was important. The Senate is incredibly important, especially since Democrats already are at a disadvantage in the Senate because of this undemocratic way that it's structured. And it was like, when canvassers came to my house, like, and Joe Manchin canvassers, and I was like, yeah, I'm planning on voting for him. And I started laughing, and we're like, honestly, like, we kind of feel the same way. We just think that it's so important that we elect a Democrat. And then Brett Kavanaugh was nominated to become a Supreme Court justice. And Joe Manchin, so before he took a stance publicly, West Virginia is such a small state. Like, everyone knows everyone. I knew people who were in rooms with him having discussions with him about it. And he wanted to vote for Brett Kavanaugh the whole time. He thought that everything had been, blown out of proportion. He gets indignant that, the rich, powerful white men can't do what they used to do. And there were people protesting outside his office. I was one of them. A bunch of my friends got arrested at his office, begging him not to vote to confirm Brett Kavanaugh. And he decided that he was going to do that anyway. And,
He's a gem.
and I mean, like, it was shocking but not surprising, like, because of course that is the stance that he would take. Of course it is. But it was just like, that was my limit, apparently.
Well,
And I
yeah.
couldn't bring myself to do it. Like, that to me was saying, fuck you, Jamie, I don't want your vote. Like,
Because, like, I mean, the whole reason to vote for, Democrats in the first place, as they keep telling us, is so that we can preserve the right to abortion. And so, like, not very helpful with that. Like, what was the point? Like,
Yeah,
yep.
it's often told that he is both him and Sinema centrist will defend by saying they vote for Biden's judges, which is a true statement. However,
they also vote for
that's a
Trump.
yeah, you're also voting for, one would argue, significantly more damage. If you look at some of the hacks, I think we're seeing some of that with Cannon, who got on the court and should not have been on the court. And so a lot of the centrists being like, okay, well, when a Republican, even if it's Trump, let's go ahead and nominate some of the judges who are not qualified by any standard, who are all sort of partisan hacks. And that was what Manchin had done. I think you had spoken about how Manchin had voted for so many of Trump's judges who are clearly either not qualified or radical.
Yep, and not just judges. I mean, like he voted to confirm, Jeff Sessions and stuff too.
Yeah. Well, he's one up on Tim Scott, right? Because he voted for Sessions, but he at least voted for the first Black woman on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
Where Tim Scott couldn't even do that. That's what he has. That's what he gets to tell. Like, yeah, I voted for the person Coretta Scott King said it's too racist, but I won't vote for the Black lady. So, yeah, so Manchin was always sort of an interesting case there because he had always wanted to vote for, as you said, like had planned to vote for Kavanaugh anyway, was part of sort of that gang with Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and others, and where it's sort of like they kind of had been deciding on how they're going to vote specifically. And I think they all came together and said, okay, we're going to go ahead and put this guy on the court who, aside from his, of course, personal odiousness as perhaps the least bad of the three. I've had debates on that with certain lawyers of like Barrett's not particularly qualified in many ways, and it is an extremist. And Gorsuch just, I think one lawyer said, just make stuff up.
Pretty much.
And like he's completely disingenuous. And but Kavanaugh sort of.
No, sorry. I just this is reminding me of a tweet I saw a while back, and I wish I remembered who to attribute it to. But it was saying like someone needs to write the book or long form article about Neil Gorsuch and how he manages to like write so like eloquently and frankly beautifully when it comes to like Indian law, and like he actually seems to like understand structural racism to an extent, but like literally only certain Indian law cases and nothing else.
Huh.
Because otherwise he doesn't think that racism exists. But I just find that really fascinating.
So Jamie, after January 6th, and Robyn had written about this as well. So after January 6th, Manchin has this epiphany that, the world is horribly divided between white supremacists who want to keep fascists in power against the will of the people and those of us who think that shouldn't happen. So we are horribly divided. And so they're so angry. And that's very interesting to put in context of how he responded to women's anger about Kavanaugh when they were protesting, but people literally storming the Capitol. It's like, oh my God, they're so angry. What have we done? I need to change. I got to look. The whole Man in the Mirror music was playing. And in that regard was sort of, as Robyn had written, we're not doing enough that Republicans want us to do. And so that was sort of the Brave New World. That was kind of Manchin's epiphany. And one of the first things he did was to kill the nomination of Neera Tanden. And regardless what you might think of Tanden, it was specifically...
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, but it was specifically because she'd written mean tweets.
Yeah.
And, he voted for, as you wrote, Jamie, 115 Trump nominees. He was constantly sucking up to the president, who responded to a rape allegation by suggesting that the victim was too ugly to rape. But now he just can't bring himself to confirm the first woman of color to be nominated for this position because sometimes she sent mean tweets. And he had voted to confirm a Twitter troll with 0 qualifications as our ambassador to Germany.
Oh, I forgot about that German ambassador.
That's Rick Grinnell, I believe.
Yes.
Yep. We truly do live in like the weirdest of times.
Yes. No, and that's a standard that clearly, not only applies to people on the left, but like probably not even like white men, as long as they weren't too far left either. Like but also no, like, yeah, when when like crazy MAGA fascists throw a violent insurrection and They're literally shit all over the Capitol building. That means that we need to listen to them more. But
Oh,
like,
yeah,
God
absolutely.
forbid,
They don't
women
feel
protest.
heard. They don't feel heard.
It's very difficult. But like, God forbid, like, women protest losing their bodily autonomy, or people protest police executions of Black people. Like, can you imagine Joe Manchin saying the same thing? Like, you know what? After these Black Lives Matter protests, I really, I think that this means we really need to start listening to people when they talk about police brutality.
No.
No, that would not happen.
I'm going to further quote you here, Jamie. So I have a prediction about how all of this is going to go. Manchin will vote for every old white man Biden nominates. The only people he'll oppose will be women and people who aren't white. This won't necessarily be actively intentional on Manchin's part. He won't notice the trend, and he will get really mad if anyone calls him out. This is also known as the Kavanaugh defense, but it's exactly what is going to happen. So what do you think of your prediction, Jamie? It's been, I guess, 2 years now about his pattern of support and non-support of Biden's nominees.
I will give him credit that he has voted for Biden's judges overall. I think there may have been one or two that he did not vote for that I disagreed with him on, but like, he voted for Justice Jackson and put out statements about her. So I have to give him that as far as that goes. And I can't think of anyone recently that he has blocked. But I mean, I still don't think I was wrong either.
Well, he is just sort of very uber white. You talked about like listening, to people. I mean, Black Democrats had fled Texas to stop voter suppression laws, and he'd gone specifically and met with Manchin because of his curious devotion to the filibuster, and were like begging him, like, do a carve out, do anything. But they're actively trying to remove the franchise from us, help, and he just didn't do any. He still refused, and he gave his self-serving speech on the Senate floor, same as Sinema, about defending the filibuster, or the Democrat face puncher 9000. And that's always very specific, because I'd gotten really annoyed when Manchin announced his retirement, and there were some folks on very important men who started lecturing all the liberals who, it's like, well, you're going to get some MAGA loon now, and you were talking about primarying him, and you should have kissed his ass every day because of what he was able to maintain. And yet these are often the same people who have vote like Black women in their profiles, who talk about Black women are the base of the party. Manchin never acted like that. And obviously he's from a state, I think, that Black people just drive through very quickly. But
when necessary, not on purpose.
he never acted that way, that Black women had any, or women of color, or so like, from killing the Equality Act, from opposing any sort of protections for Roe, and also for voting rights. So it just seems like, how do you go to, and it's always weird because you see these polls and people are sort of like, oh my God, all these marginalized groups aren't as thrilled about Biden or Democrats. How could it be true? And it's just like, okay, well, I mean, you can still have good roads and have no rights while driving on those good roads. So like, all of this stuff that you're saying that Manchin helped do, he opposed the stuff that now you're knocking on a Black person's door and saying, oh, well, here's what Republicans are going to do. It's like, well, you didn't actually, because of Manchin, do anything to stop those. It was never a priority. His priority was working with white guys.
And Republicans, preferably.
Yeah. Well, comically so, right? Like, so, I mean, John Tester does this he's adorable. He had the adorable little videos with Cory Booker, where they're like friends, which I think is important, right? It shows of like who he works, like, Manchin was kind of like, how dare the vice president, a Black woman, come come to my state without my permission, which is like the most racist, sexist statement I'd ever heard of. Like, well, no, she's the vice president, and she's because the 13th Amendment, a free woman who can like travel without your permission. But
and he said nothing when Pence came. I was there.
Yeah, like it does, like she has the right to go places, but yeah, like he
I don't know, in West Virginia, have they like there could be laws about that we don't know about. So,
but yeah, he did nothing to defend those rights, protect those rights. I remember the State of the Union. It seems like something from a comedy routine. So he talked about how he went over and sat for bipartisanship, for unity. We need unity. So he sat on the Republican side next to Mitt Romney. It's like, oh, I'm glad that in this crazy world now where we almost had, white supremacists storming the Capitol and all of this, that two rich white assholes can get along. Like that's not even the odd couple though, right? I've got nothing to write on that.
They're kind of the same dude.
Like is Manchin dirtier than Romney? Because Romney would seem like Romney seems the Unger, I guess. There, he's the who's the rest of.
Yeah, Romney's the scandal-free one of that duo. No, I have honestly been loving the talk of the no labels people who are like, yeah, we're gonna put Joe Manchin and Mitt Romney on a presidential ticket together. Just what?
Oh my God! I think
here's the thing. I love that they think that would be fabulously successful.
I think I fell asleep thinking about that ticket. So first off, just for those, I don't want to insult anyone and their understanding of geography, but West Virginia is very small. So I think 280,000 people voted for, fewer people than saw a Taylor Swift concert or something like that, voted for Manchin in 2018. Jamie was
they're down to only 2 congressional seats now.
Robyn's new mayor, more people.
We both have Mayor Johnsons, by the way, which can make my social media feed incredibly confusing because I follow both a ton of Chicago and Milwaukee people.
But
sorry,
literally more people voted for Mayor Johnson in Chicago than for Manchin but obviously if Johnson was like, I'm going to run for president, it was like, what are you talking about? You're just the mayor. Hold on there, dude. But Manchin has no constituency. He's such an MSNBC, mainstream media sort of creation of what people think a Republican perhaps should be, sort of a nice Republican or good, or, a very West Wing Democrat, conservative Democrat, and principled and all of that type of crap, and who lectures women and minorities, and but no one votes for that. How would he ever, especially when Democrats, it's very interesting, they get very scared. Oh no, Manchin's running. It's well, you just told us that Kamala Harris is going to be obviously going to win everything because Black women, it's all about Black women, but now you're scared of this West Virginia guy who is
everyone hates on both sides of the aisle.
Well, yes. As he saw, he's quitting. He was not able. And
let's not pretend that that has anything to do with anything other than what you said at the top, which is avoiding the humiliation of being absolutely crushed by Jim Justice.
Yeah.
What I don't understand, actually I do, because narcissism is the answer. But so in West Virginia, the way gubernatorial term limits work, it's only about consecutive terms. So he could actually go back and run for governor of West Virginia again, and frankly, have a decent chance. Jim Justice is his own thing in West Virginia. Unfortunately, people like him for whatever reason.
I don't want to be rude, Jamie, but why? I've seen video of him. And I'm not trying to be shallow or whatever. I'm not overwhelmed by the charisma. So what's happening?
So I actually wrote in a cat when he ran for governor as a Democrat because I couldn't bring myself. I did not think he had the intelligence to do the job of running a state, nor could I vote for the governing as a Republican. So I'm pretty sure I voted for my cat Buster for that gubernatorial election. Yeah, and he ran as a Democrat in 2016, won as a Democrat, and then like immediately at a Trump rally switched
Yeah.
party.
That happens a lot. Everyone was very afraid of Manchin switching, but you could never ask him to do anything and you had to be very
Deferential.
deferential to him, or he would switch parties and make Mitch McConnell Senate majority. We wouldn't get those judges. That's what I kept being told. And I thought it was interesting because, well, Manchin was all apparently about Senate norms and helping the Senate, but you're saying that if we pissed him off, he would not only switch parties, but he'd just sit there and shrug while,
Yeah.
McConnell refused to allow votes on
But here's the
Biden's.
thing. It's very different when Republicans break the rules. It's a different thing entirely. Like, you have to let them do it. It's like, like when, young boys act crazy and they're like, oh, boys will be boys. You got to let them have that a little, and basically Republicans are like, boys will be boys. Like, got to let them do what they want.
Slightly on topic with Manchin, though, is that today, Elise Stefanik, who had endorsed George Santos, so to put that into proper context, has come out and to endorse proactively, because the primary hasn't even started yet, proactively endorsing Carrie Lake in Arizona, the current imaginary governor of Arizona, in her Senate race against Sinema. I've been writing about this because it's just so delicious, but the fact that there is not a single, again, all these very important white dudes. I live a world of where white dudes just tell me why I'm wrong and why they're right. I just remember, I remember on election night 2018, some white guy was like, I said, oh, Donnelly's losing. And I was like, no, there's plenty. That was just a row of votes. There are plenty of votes. It's like, okay, I think he's losing. And then, they responded, oh, you're right, they're losing. It's like, you just quoted a different white guy. But I'm looking at the same data as that white guy. Like, that's the same.
Steven, you just have a little bit too much melanin for people to like.
It's just
there's they just don't get it.
It's just so infuriating. It's like, well, okay, like fine, but I'd said even at the time that they were very certain. Oh, Republicans won't contest Sinema's seat. They will they will support her, especially over someone like Lake. It's like, what? You're crazy. Of course not. Like, and no one at Romney can help her. No one can help her. So like pretty much everyone in their whole rule is like, well, math. Also, she has vote. I mean, she's ostensibly, she's not very good at being pro-choice.
Yeah.
And supporting voting rights. She's not good at those things, but she in theory is, and so they would much rather have Lake. And so she's just it's a matter of whether she's gonna follow in Manchin's footsteps, right? Do you think that's gonna happen? Because she's gonna get humiliated, right? It seems.
But I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I don't pretend to understand the way her brain works. Like, Joe Manchin is kind of like your classic, like, rich, powerful, narcissistic white dude.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how Sinema's brain functions.
But she's apparently, from my sources, a horrible human being. Yes. So like people have been in meetings with her. Like she's someone who will like badmouth, like, someone who's like on the phone with someone being like, and I'm always, because this is how my mother taught me. It's like, well, what is that person going to say about you when you're not there? Don't be like, no. Anyone who talks crap about people behind their backs, if they're not saying it to their face, but if they're saying it behind their back, they're saying the same crap about you. Those are bad.
Oh, absolutely.
And but Sinema's very much seems to be someone who is that way. Like Manchin, I can imagine amongst his country club friends is probably perfectly charming or whatever, but Sinema is kind of like, sort of, I'm a Democrat, but I don't like Democrats. I don't want to hang out with them. They're old guys who've eaten Jello. But so there are polls where she's doing like 17. She's in not just third place, but like 70. A sitting senator, like 17% of the vote. So it's gonna be embarrassing. So my sense is that maybe she's going to maybe she will eventually see the writing on the wall. But you're right. There's no predict. She's just so nuts that maybe she will just. I had been concerned that she would get all of the. Um, there were a lot of sort of Katie Hobbs Republicans and Biden folks who had backed, say, McCain, who had supported Sinema in 2018 and Biden in 2020 and Kelly and Hobbs and that Gallego would need those guys, but looks like no. It's like it's splitting. Like she's taking some votes. Like pretty much Democrats want nothing to do with her.
Yeah.
And it's all she's splitting some of the indies as well. So her fault. She and but Manchin seems to be doing the most damage. If I go back to talk to him, but what do you think of some of the statements he's made about essentially a very clear both sides rhetoric? That both Democrats and Republicans aren't trying hard enough, and we need to go in the middle. I'm going to travel the country and meet people. I'm sure he's going to show up at my uncle's barbecue and want to talk to. Let me talk to Black folks.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure when he's touring Middle America that he's gonna come over here to Milwaukee and go to a gay bar and and it's definitely not going to be those same rural diners that the New York Times always seems to find and write about. But it's also just like coming from a man who so clearly does not listen to anyone or give a shit in any way. Like that just makes it so much better.
Like he might go around, yeah.
Like his state was the state that was helped the most by the child tax credit. He was also the one who killed it. Like he does not care.
Yeah.
No, not so much. I mean, this is the thing. Like, what I think will happen is he's going to like go from town to town, like the littlest hobo. People who get that will be very excited about that reference. But like talking to all these people, and each time he's like, this person is an extremist every time they disagree with them, or like, oh, guess I'm, it's another, outlier. It's a fluke that I keep running into all these people who disagree with me, and then like find like one person who agrees with them, and he's like, fantastic, good job at representing America. Like.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for like the social media content of him with like a bunch of old white men from small towns, like, and he's like, they're talking about how that woke left really needs to be nicer to people, and I agree.
I just find it fascinating. There's, again, among many centrists, this desire to downplay the damage he's done, and because Biden's entire value proposition was, I'm going to work across the aisle and I'm going to do all these things, and he essentially legislatively he only did what Manchin permitted, and Sinema permitted, and now Manchin is saying that he didn't do those things. He didn't work across the middle, side enough. And those are all lies. That's pretty damaging for a lot of swing voters who aren't as informed. It's very damaging to Biden's value proposition. He wasn't out there. It wasn't as if, I mean, again, when we talk about why we have the 90-year-old nominee next year, is we were told that of the 101 other, it was a Disney film, the 101 Democratic candidates, of those 101 who weren't going to be 90 next year. I'm sorry, he's 82. He's going to be 82. A sprightly 82.
Yes, right.
That only Biden could win, based on polls that now we don't trust, but only Biden could win, or he was moderate enough or could work with Republicans to get stuff done. Like Warren wouldn't be able to do that. And I know if you don't like Warren, if you don't like Sanders, but there were many, like Jay Inslee, there were like many folks, other white guys. Jay Inslee was a robust 70. There were other white guys you could have chosen. And
there were those guys that I couldn't even tell apart.
Yes, there was Tim Ryan, Seth Moulton. There was like a lot of white guys. Even
4 different Tim Ryans. I think.
There are many options.
Tim Ryan at one point.
There are just many options, and so we have now as if there was no other options. Like, well, what can you
Yes.
do? You have the 82-year-old. It's like, okay, but now Manchin is deliberately undermining that entire narrative. We didn't get the crazy liberal president, and now Manchin is saying, "Oh, he went too far." We didn't get that. So
No.
he's instead like he's dismantling the reality, which is actually dangerous, more dangerous. I mean, people still to this day talk about, oh, Nader or Stein saying bad stuff about Gore or Hillary Clinton was what cost them the election. But Jill Stein is a fucking idiot. I'm sorry. That's my personal opinion. Others may disagree. But there are, and I also think that, Manchin's not a particularly bright person, but he is going to be on MSNBC for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be doing this travel around the country thing. And it will look bad. Can I ask you, Jamie, why are Democrats so bad about keeping their folks in line like this, for Manchin to Sinema, who they actually gave her a seat, like when Jill, one of Dianne Feinstein's seats when she had passed away? Like, why would you give this non-Democrat such a she's on the appropriations committee or something? Like, what's going on?
I mean, I frankly have no real explanation for it. It's Democrats make it so hard to be a Democrat. It's almost impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like they're constantly trying to find ways to shoot themselves in the foot, or like help Republicans and talk about how we need a strong Republican Party instead of trying to strengthen their own party.
Yeah, well,
and also just like the refusal for decades to listen to what voters actually want. And I'm sorry, like, and like we've, the three of us have talked about this before, like, at least the Republican politicians, like when they see like a groundswell of support for something, like they will think about it or just straight out adopt that policy, even if it's batshit insane.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there are like these wonderful policies that not just Democrats, but like majorities of regular people support, like abortion, that Democrats have been hiding from for decades. And
no one has sort of admitted that they're wrong, right?
Abortion was a bad thing to run on in rural areas. It was true. It's just not true now because of Dobbs. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I that was interesting, right? But again, it's the very important people. That's what's frustrating. I've had a breakdown over it. Don't worry about me. Don't say stuff. But I really have just had it, like with white liberals, white male liberals, because it's just like, no, you're like, it's a constant. It's like gaslight. It's constant, and not even the fun, like shadowy, like just annoying gaslight of lies about no, you said the reason that I don't have Nancy Pelosi's experience. How dare I question why she should support, an anti-choice guy in Texas in a state in a seat that we could potentially, and also don't support them, even if fight for those seats, because then yes, people will wonder later, well, why didn't you pass protections for Roe if abortion is very popular? Like, why didn't you pass this when, in 2009, and the argument being, oh, well, we've never had 60 senators or enough representatives to support abortion. And if that is true, then maybe you should now make that sort of a bar, like we're not going to support these like Manchin describes himself as quote unquote pro-life or whatever. So maybe now let's just say there's no room for that we can protect human rights.
They don't want litmus tests for things that people are supposed to believe in order to be Democrats, I guess.
Yeah, like basic human rights. A mandatory belief in basic human rights is just a bridge too far.
Yes.
And that's just, everything's fine. But no, I for one am really looking forward to Joe Manchin coming back from his tour in Middle America and talking about how popular abortion rights and legalized weed are, because guess what?
They are. But there are really, there are so many things that are just hugely, hugely popular. And no one does anything on them at all. Like, not even like, abortion type stuff, but like there's like a lot of like criminal justice reform that is extremely popular.
Or like
There's a
civil
lot of,
asset forfeiture. Fucking no one except law enforcement likes civil
yeah,
asset forfeiture.
yeah. Like no one likes that. Collectively, everyone agrees that it is bad. And there are so many things that like that, but it's like this, oh no, well, we can't do that. We can't, like, that'll scare people. Like 80% of the people I forget what it was recently, where it was like 80% of the country was like, this is a fantastic idea, let's do it. And it was like, it would be like such a slam. There are so many things that would be like such slam dunks for Democrats to support, and they're like, we're a little scared. Like,
Yeah, well, Republicans, oppose certain things that certainly have pop, but they don't really care about minorities or marginalized groups. It's sort of about a white, majority. That's who they cater. So their votes make sense. What they support,
yeah,
what they tear down makes sense. And yet, so when people were very frustrated with Sinema and Manchin, it was just like, well, none of this makes sense for you to fight as a Democrat, specifically Sinema, who kind of betrayed everyone who literally got her elected and who had canvassed for her and so forth, and she sold out to the big money donors and hedge fund folks and so forth. Manchin, even if you're going to make allowance for him as a conservative Democrat or whatever, at the end of the day, though, whatever power he enjoyed was because of Black voters in Georgia. Otherwise, he would not have been sitting on any committees, even if he had flipped and joined. I mean, if we hadn't won those seats, Republicans would have had like a 52, 53. They wouldn't need Manchin. So him flipping and being the 53rd or the 54th wasn't going to get him any sort of prime committee membership or anything, or any power influence, and he was never going to survive a primary. Do you think he would ever? He's just not, no one, because Republicans themselves don't care about the stuff. He's such a, as I said before, MSNBC kind of Republican or Democrat or whatever. They don't, but voters don't care. They want passion. They want they want someone who's like, I'm going to fight for the stuff that's important to you.
Well, and frankly, as long I always thought, like, as long as he remained in the Senate, that the things about him switching parties were overblown. The West Virginia Republican Party fucking hates Joe Manchin. Absolutely fucking hates him from top to bottom. He was never going to become a West Virginia Republican. Like, he just wasn't. They have hated him since, the 90s. Like, that was just not going to happen. And he has always had a lot of influence over the West Virginia Democratic Party that he was never going to have over the West Virginia Republican Party ever.
They let anyone have that kind of power, so much. And
it seemed like an excuse. I mean, you are hard to reach, so maybe all the Democrats, the writers, the pundits, the very important people were having trouble reaching out to you, Jamie, and getting this information, or calling anyone at Virginia or whatever. But like, this fear was very stated that we had to accept whatever face slapping Manchin gave us and disrespect he showed to, again, Black people and voting rights, queer people and the Equality Act, women, from going back to Kavanaugh, but also on abortion rights, and all those things that, Biden is not pitting his reelection hopes on Rhodes, because Rhodes aren't, he's like, even if let's say you don't believe the polls or whatever, but if you were to believe the polls, the Rhodes weren't what's exciting. But so everything here is, again, as Robyn has said, abortion rights, scaring Black people because of what Republicans might do to us, scaring, and I've mentioned this before, Jamie, is the idea that, as someone who talks to Black people, and again, all the very important white men who will look at polls of Biden doing poorly amongst people of color and say that's impossible. I don't have any minority friends, but I know for a fact that this is impossible. Biden's going to do just as well as amongst black men as Barack Obama, who was 30 years younger, and whatever. But it's just very frustrating when Pelosi or any Dem leader talks about a strong Republican Party or stating that any good Republican has like good faith disagreements about policy or thing, but like there's a philosophy there that's respectful. And then if you were to say, well, okay, well, there's you're at risk of losing, particularly with your very MSNBC
Mhm.
college educated, very geared towards a certain demo, you're at risk of losing not just working class white voters, but working class black voters, particularly men and Hispanics, particularly men. Then they would say, well, of course not. That party's a bunch of racists. And
Yeah.
what I hear is that you're saying that I don't have the right to make the same choices about these good faith policies as your white friends from Adam Kinzinger to Liz Cheney, who you respect. Like, okay, so I couldn't, so my cousin can't be Adam Kinzinger. If he is, he's a sucker. But you won't call Adam Kinzinger or Liz Cheney racist, right? So then why can't my cousin vote for the same people or have the same beliefs as Adam Kinzinger? And they can't answer that question fundamentally.
Right, like my white working class family is voting against their own interests too when they vote Republican, but no one has any issue with that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I tend to not. I mean, people prioritize and they feel no one's a sucker. Everyone votes for who they believe is fighting for them or representing things for them. We need to
I
understand
think
why
everyone's
they are.
to be fair, but
And so you need to figure out why they are voting the way they are. I think too often Democrats just seem to think that it's just things are sort of inherently true. Like, for instance, that Trump is a fascist is sort of inherently true. And that has not been effectively communicated to the majority of white people who are going to still turn out for him in the same degree. And so they can't have trouble confronting that reality. And Manchin's not helping. I mean, Manchin was in an interview. Salon had an article about how he said that it'd be very bad if Trump were to win. But again, it's about Trump being mean, which voters don't care. Which voters don't care about. They don't care about your polite country club. If this were a movie, they like the Trumps. They don't like the Manchins in the cinemas. The Trumps are the heroes of that TV show, like the Bundys snapping around the Trumps, the Manchins and the Collins and whatever. So, but they can't just say, Manchin certainly won't say that queer people, their lives are at risk, or other, these specifically minorities won't be able to vote because God forbid you state that, no, well, the world might actually be like it was in 1958, which was very bad. The spike grease was very bad for minorities. And no one wants to hear that. So they can't communicate it that way. They have to sort of state it of these ridiculous, like Tom Nichols at the Atlantic was finally coming around on the idea that after years of saying that, of lecturing specifically women after 2016, specifically women and people of color, oh, don't call Trump a fascist. Don't talk. That's ridiculous. You've always said this. You're being silly. He's just this. And then now it's like, oh no, he's a fascist. It's like, oh, what changed? Oh, you believe he's going to be a threat to you now. Except that's the worst time to come. It's like, oh no, well, okay, all the other stuff. A Muslim ban is a terrible thing. Like, oh, he's not. My cushy job in the government I won't be able to have unless I'm a MAGA clone. Oh my God, he's a fascist. It's like, I'm sorry, but a guy working at a grocery store in Wisconsin doesn't give a crap about Trump saying he's only going to hire people who agree with him for these cushy government jobs. Like, oh my God, democracy is at stake. It's like, well, no. like, I think that you could communicate democracy is at stake when, like, trans people are fleeing their states to protect their children. But oh no, that's not fascism. It's fascism now
Mhm.
that it's tough for a David Frum or a Tom Nichols or Charlie Sykes or
Because
whatever.
isn't that really what matters though? Like,
Well, and I actually saw Manchin like a couple of days ago in the same breath. He actually did say that like Donald Trump was a threat to democracy, and then in the same breath was like, and Joe Biden is too far left. Just
oh yeah, no, like that's, I mean, really, that is the problem with all Joe Biden right now, for sure. Like, it's what everyone's saying.
right, right.
Well,
Of all my
yeah.
complaints
I
about
don't, there's literally no person on earth that is like an appropriate amount of left for Joe Manchin, unless their name is Joe Manchin. Like that is it.
Yeah.
He
Well,
is his
that's a challenge for Democrats, right? Because like whatever someone says this Democrat is too far left, actual leftists are kind of like, what? This asshole? And like,
we
but when
don't
you're
know her.
like,
Like,
but when anyone, even Republicans, would say, "Oh my God, what Trump's going to do with these guys? This is way too right and too MAGA, and DeSantis is way too right and too MAGA." Actual far right people and lunatics are like,
yeah.
"Woo! This is
Yeah.
stirring up their base. They love it." So, like, you
Well,
have a
actually, no, they
very
don't ever say anyone is too far right. Like, they will never, ever, ever say those actual words, because the further right you go, the better you are. Like, that is, they do not punch right. And they'll never say that is too far right. You can only be too far left. As
Yeah, I
far as,
mean, I think a lot of the terms they use now instead of anti-democratic or anti sort of stuff that like, oh, he's going to do these things, but these are things that like the stuff that DeSantis was doing, the base adored.
yeah,
Like the base pandering worked, and to Robin's point, that was never presented as he was presented as the okay, well, you don't get Trump, you're going to get DeSantis, who had a reign of terror for 4 years, and that was going to be considered perfectly someone they would put up against Biden as a normal Republican. So, I mean,
and
that is
if
sort of the challenge.
and if DeSantis weren't so obviously animatronic, I would be more concerned. I would almost be more concerned about him than a Trump, because he has been more effective at his fascism.
oh
He's
yeah,
been quite effective at fascism in Florida. And our saving grace under Trump was that so many of the of the wins at the Supreme Court had nothing to do with like the actual like constitutionality of the policy. It was that like his administration was so incompetent that they couldn't
yeah.
follow the Administrative Procedures Act.
Yeah, no, I don't want a competent Republican. We have to have one. I'd rather have one that's incompetent. Um, but a lot of my issue with the whole like, well, it should be argument enough if we just say he's a threat to democracy, and no one should need any more than that, because I think it's fucking rude. Like, I hate anything that's like, and you can just take my word on it. Like, you shouldn't need more. He's a fascist or he's a threat to democracy. Like, yes, he is both of those things, but also it's okay to tell people why he's bad, or like why Biden is better. Like, it's okay to get into details. And I feel like when people do that should be enough for you. You're basically calling them stupid.
Mhm.
Just
Well,
insulting.
yeah, Republicans do it. I mean, even though there's sham stuff of like Democrats and Democratic pundits are shocked that people think that there's corruption in the White House and with Hunter Biden's, because they go on television every day talking about it and they commit fully. And Democrats think that sort of clever rejoinders are better and more civilized, or they won't even, like Pelosi, I won't even deign to say Trump's name. And it's like, okay, well, if that's a threat, like after 9/11, if you're like, well, that guy, what guy? I mean, Bin Laden, like he's a serious, like, why would you actually say this guy, whatever, like would, so it was this idea that like, or focusing on the fact that his spelling is bad or something,
Yeah.
as if he's a comical figure. But Trump has always been terrible. I was writing about the gentleman from the Exonerated Five who won a New York City Council seat, and when Trump was back in the late '80s trying to get these kids, by the way,
Yeah.
so not just bringing them to death penalty, but the death penalty for kids, minors. His op-ed was the same rambling, random capitalization gibberish that he does now. So he's not. I mean, I think that's unfortunately the challenge with the Democratic dogma is that how can anyone, despite the polling, be more concerned about Biden's age than Trump's age? And I guess the challenge there is that, well, fair or not, Trump seems the same as he did a few years ago, whereas there's a noticeable, even from like the Obama administration, a kind of a noticeable difference in Biden that people notice, average people notice that I'm talking to. And so I feel like that's, go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, and I was just going to say, and it's not just like the number of the age too. Like, I want to say Liz Warren is only a couple of years younger than Biden, but like, she doesn't come off as, you know, potentially having cognitive issues because she's older. Like, she just doesn't. And like, I don't know that all of it's fair or not with Biden. I don't, but you're right. There have been noticeable differences, and like, people see that he has been in the public eye since, you know, nationally since the Obama administration.
Yeah, that is the challenge of getting someone who's been around for so long, because there's
I mean, like, this is what happens when we insist on nominating a guy who like lovingly talks about how he used to, you know, hang out with the segregationists in the Senate.
Well, just someone who entered the Senate. Someone who entered the Senate before I was born, and I'm almost 50. That's probably not. That is yes, old. But yeah, the Democratic dogma is that, like, don't talk to normal people. And you and I had this discussion, Jamie, of like, how do you canvass people with this? Because all you do, I had one person who I raised something, and it was just like, the person's response was like, "Oh, I know you out in Portland living on your wife." I was like, "What? Okay, well, that's a weird statement to make for just literally sharing a poll." But okay, representative of the Democratic Party, you guys have really got it about how to communicate these concerns that people have. I think I mentioned this to Robyn as well. I was just freaking terrified last week and annoyed when Nancy Pelosi was talking about how, because there's this consistent theme, so that if the polls don't exist, the polls are all wrong, the polls are all gibberish, and polling experts believe we should now change how we write polls. Right. Or if they are right, well, we got you. The polls showed Barack Obama down a year before the election. Ha! It's like, okay, well, I mean, you know,
checkmate.
It's like if I had a play about to go on that had a lot of problems, and someone was like, "Hey, well, you know, at this time, man, Lin-Manuel Miranda thought Hamilton wasn't going to work." Well, I don't. Those are two different things. I don't think my play is going to work. Like, my play's in big trouble. Yes, I mean, maybe there was like tightening up some songs or whatever, but there's a very big difference. So Barack Obama was a once in a generation type candidate, and it's very insulting to me as a Black person when you try to compare what he achieved with any white person, particularly even Biden. Like, the idea that Obama was he was a tremendous campaigner. So that goes back to the weird age thing. And I know a lot of people, I'm not a big fan of Nate Silver, but his thing of like, well, there are people within the administration saying that Biden might not be able to campaign full on while simultaneously running the nation because he's, you know, and I know that I'm not supposed to mention that 80 is an age. Someone has like, well, my grandmother is 83 and she runs 8 miles a day every morning. And it's like, okay, all right, sure. Okay, we'll pretend that 82 is very different. Biden's a time lord and he's going to regenerate shortly before the election. And David Tennant is going to like kick ass at the election. That'd be great. That'd be great timing for the regeneration.
Yes, perfect.
It's like, oh my God, he's David Tennant. I'm going to vote for him twice. But like, you know, Obama did a lot of work Like he was a great campaigner. He was out there filling up stadiums, exciting, like literally fired up, ready to go. That was he was, all those young people and everyone to turn out.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing for that year. It wasn't just like, well, Obama was behind a year ago. Well, he did stuff.
Yeah.
And he campaigned and kicked ass. And like, okay, well, people are concerned that like Biden's not going to be able to campaign at that level. And we did not see him campaign at that level in 2020 for legitimate reasons. So can I be concerned? Well, no, because here's this article I'm going to share from a white guy about how people are stupid and just need to listen to the people who are smart and understand how politics work. And it's like, okay, well, God love you, but I don't know. I mean, what do you think of that? The comparisons to 2011 and now.
Oh, I mean, you're absolutely right that it's fucking insulting. And I mean, and it's, if we're talking about Obama, I mean, from the level of like him as a campaigner, as a candidate, the charisma that he has, there isn't a Democrat on the national stage who is anywhere remotely close to that. Even ones I like. Like Obama is a once in a generation.
I don't want to hear any of them singing Al Green, frankly. Like,
yeah,
no, Obama was he really was. He was a once in a generation political talent. He's like. I was a fan of his when he was in the state senate, and he was not my state senator. Like he was just that good. Like he just sucked you in. And yeah, and oh God, just like that feeling of hope that I had on election night in 2008, like I physically cannot feel anymore.
Well, and that was a feeling of hope, not of, oh my God, McCain and Palin are going to kill me.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, hope is just a stronger motivator than fear. It's just,
it just is.
You can go to the well on fear a couple times. And I think 2020 was an example of that. And it helped that, Trump was overseeing a plague and still came within 40,000 votes of winning. So that's a concern. Also, you're not supposed to ever concede that Trump might be a good candidate, but he's not Mitt Romney. I think people want to live in a world where Romney is such a great candidate, or Nikki Haley is such a great candidate, and Trump, who did win, even though obviously people want to say that it was just a fluke that he won, except, well, we got our asses kicked from a fluke. So I get really worried about flukes. Like, I don't, okay, well, look how Hillary Clinton could have won. Yes. Okay. Like, here's the Supreme Court we could have had. That's not what happened. And so the insistence it was a fluke. It's like, okay, well, Trump is not Mitt Romney. And I think, isn't it, they talk about how there was an article in the Atlantic about how Mitt Romney's campaign clearly collapsed and the Obama campaign seized on his 47% gaffe. So that's a world where that's almost a quaint thing right now. Like Trump literally could kill someone and it won't have that. This guy he has 91 felony indictments and is like leading certain polls. So that means that there is no like over the course of an election, like, oh, look when Romney made that 47% gaffe. Or, oh, remember when he went abroad and had a bad time abroad and said some stuff he shouldn't have said? Like, those are adorable times. Remember when John McCain suspended his campaign to go back to help with the economy? Wow, that was crazy. And Obama was able to seize on that. Like that, Trump is indicted. Trump tried to overthrow the government. So that is, to me, a more serious issue. You're running against someone. It's all out there. It's just like, well, it's like he hasn't been exposed.
Here's what I will tell you. The reason he does like it has because he carries it off. The more like if you make a mistake and you carry it off, you're like, yep, no, I did that. If you own it, people will just go along with you. for the most part. Like, and they'll just be like, oh, that's cool that you're just like open about it. What I think people react to more so than the mistake is the, oh my God, I made a mistake thing. Like, and the person freaking out about it. Like, I think that is more what voters react to. Like, what's his face with the weird laugh one time guy that
Oh, Howard Dean.
Yeah, Howard Dean. Like, it was like, oh no, the shame of it all. And like a lot of the time, like when you see people getting fallout for things, it is because, they clearly realize that they fucked up. Donald Trump has no idea that he fucked up ever and is in fact insistent that he has not. And a lot of the time, people are lazy. They will just go along with you if that's the easier thing to do. Like, if
Yeah,
Robyn was like, no, I actually do think poor people are garbage, people would be like, you know what, maybe clearly he has a conviction there.
what's interesting to me is like because when Tom Nichols released his article, he didn't lead with that of I was wrong by saying earlier that Trump wasn't a fascist and I should have listened to women, and especially women of color, who were, as you said about Barbara Lee, Robyn, prematurely correct. They never get credit for that. It's
No.
just suddenly the right person comes in and covers the song, and this was always the song. That someone else sang that song. I don't know. It was always Elvis.
No,
What?
totally
Okay.
makes sense that Elvis Presley is singing about hound dogs.
And so the lie to me was sort of the fact that we all know what's going to happen. Like Biden will lose, and they're already setting up that it will be because of you.
Yeah.
Like they weren't wrong about any of these issues, and there's nothing they could have done. It was always always the people protesting.
Like a regular Democrat, and I'm not going to get into details about why. And you start going, well, I'm not going to vote for Biden. I'm going to vote for Trump because Biden isn't being conservative enough on this issue or whatever. That's fine. You go ahead. Even like if you're like a weird racist person who calls like whatever, but like that's fine. If you're like a regular ass Democrat, you can totally say, I'm going to vote for Trump if, Biden doesn't do what I want. But if you're on the left and you say like, I might sit this one out. I don't know that I can bring myself to vote for, someone for this reason. Then it's like, you're a spoiler. You're just taking your toys and going home.
Well, the idea is that you are supposed to believe in democracy and all of this more than the suburban soccer mom who voted for Glenn Youngkin. Like no one says to her, like, and there is no narrative of that. For instance, so every time something bad would happen after Hillary Clinton lost, there would be a photo of Robyn, of any sort of lip, like, here, it's these people. That's why these guys are on the Supreme Court. It's these people. It's like, well, that's a lovely photo of Jamie, but come on. Like, she even voted for, well, it's these people. She mentioned that Hillary said something, even though she voted for her. She meant like it's her fault. But no one mentions those women who went from, those white ladies and men who went from Biden to Glenn Youngkin and were wrong. No one ever talks about this is their fault. They voted for this, and then it's like, well, no.
They're never bad. Like,
here's what Democrats can do to come back and get these voters back, and here's how they can show, which is arguably what you should do, because if you're a politician, the voter has the right to vote the way they're going to vote every time. So you need to do what you can to either communicate to them or whatever. Insulting voters, which has been the Democratic policy since 2016, isn't working. Like, that does not work. That is not effective. And people will say, yes, it does work, because we're having these victories over, frankly, because we lost Roe. I think things would be very different otherwise. So, I think that it's just frustrating, again, to me, that the idea that, I grew up so many Black people who would necessarily be inclined to vote as these suburban white ladies do, but they're not. They're told that obviously you're going to come around for us. Obviously, we don't even need to try to.
You're the
Oh,
workhorses, like, basically is what
yes.
more or less say.
Yeah, like it's a very old major I will work harder type thing from Animal Farm that they keep saying each time, and the same folks keep saying that of like black women will save us or black people understand what's at stake. And it's like, well, that's really charming and great. And then don't answer our phone calls when
Yeah.
like you just turn up in black churches before an election and then don't answer our phone calls and you govern trying to appeal to, and as I've quoted before, like Malcolm X said, we put you first, you put us last.
Yeah.
Because you're chumps.
Yep.
That's how you treat us. So I guess we're at 105. So Jamie, any other final things to say about your former beloved Senator Joe Manchin?
Oh, Joe. You know what? No. I'm like I said earlier. I can't wait for Anna's Middle America tour for him to come. I'm gonna show him my favorite gay bar. I'm really sure
We'll
that
have
like
a great time here in Middle America, I'm sure. Like,
yeah, no, like you and I can show him
yeah,
Chicago and Milwaukee, and I'm sure that'll totally be exactly what he's thinking
yeah,
of.
absolutely. That's definitely what he's talking about. Ooh, I, for one, wish him a, exciting second career in pharmaceutical lobbying. Um,
Yes, I'm sure that's where he's going.
yeah, I'm pretty sure I would actually put a little bit of money on that, like, personally.
Oh yeah, he's already got an in with his daughter, the
Yeah.
EpiPen queen.
So next week will be Thanksgiving, so it'll be obviously much abbreviated here at Wonkette. And then instead of the normal Sunday chat, we're going to post up my interview with my beloved Broadway Barbara Cabaret former. So look out for that on Sunday, and like, share, subscribe, all the goodies. There are folks who do get upset if we gear too young or too gay or too black, and I just want to caution you that this interview will be at least two of those things. So please, but but I know you'll still. I think it'll still be fun for all of you. So I'll see you.
That makes me want to watch even more, Steven.
Please do. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks
Right.
everyone. We'll see you next time.